As we rebuild after lockdown, I want to explore the foundations for life that can withstand the storms that come and go. See, foundations are vital. I want to imagine that down here on Main Beach behind me lives a castaway who never learns from his mistakes. He rebuilds his shack made of pallets and cable ties plunk in the middle of the sand only for the tide to wash it away twice a day. He has the same frustrated look on his face, morning and evening, the same throwing of his hands in the air, and the same desperate struggle to prevent his belongings from being washed out to sea. We might justly class such a builder as foolish, someone who should know better. Even if he built a castle on the sand, it would collapse. Can you imagine how many sails such a builder might have if his houses kept falling down? There's a story told in the Gospels of a foolish man who built his house on the sand, and he's contrasted with a wise man who built his house on the rock. I'm filming here beside one of the shelters on Rogie Cliff Walk. Not quite a house, but they've been standing for well over half a century because they were built on rock. Suffice to establish that foundations are of vital importance when it comes to building anything. In the story Jesus told, there are two builders, one who built on rock and one who built on sand. And you can guess what happens next. The thing both builders had in common was that storms will always come and go. Listen to the words that Jesus tells us. There was a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had foundations on the rock. And there was a foolish man who built his house in the sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, the wind blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Bearing in mind that we're currently in Bundoran, one of the windiest spots known to man, just imagine those dark winter days when the driving rain batters down, the violent wind bites, and the waves masquerade as monsters with everyone scurrying to their homes. See, the storms of life come and go, don't they? They take many forms. Perhaps it's depression, perhaps it's the Brexit storm, perhaps it's illness. Often they come in unexpected ways, like this coronavirus. This pandemic has swept the carpet from under our feet. The healthcare system is on high alert. The economy is on life support and failing. Our fragile mental health hangs in the balance. It's worth asking, what am I, what are you basing your life on? And is it working? What storms and judgment do is they expose the foundations. They uncover what we are building on. Storms reveal the fracture lines, the cracks. They expose the flaws in our thinking and philosophy of life. That what we once trusted has crumbled beneath us. It's like basing your existence on lies. Scratchy sand between your toes irritates like crumbling dreams. It's a crisis of faith in a creed that no longer holds water. See, wealth and self-reliance aren't dependable. When the house shakes, it focuses the mind on honest reflection of any assumptions that we may have had. The wise man reevaluates and changes his course of action to avoid disaster. So how are we to build on rock? When Jesus told this story, what was he getting at? Let's listen again to his story, the full version. Therefore, everyone who hears these words of mine, says Jesus, and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, yet it did not fall, because it had its foundation on the rock. But everyone who hears these words of mine and does not put them into practice is like a foolish man who built his house on sand. The rain came down, the streams rose, and the winds blew and beat against that house, and it fell with a great crash. Jesus had just given his amazing Sermon on the Mount, and he says a foolish man may listen to him. Some even refuse to listen. But those who disregard everything Jesus says, when the storms come, it will result in wobble and then collapse. See, one day we will all stand before our Maker. Our lives will be laid bare, our foundations clear, and there will be no valid excuses for rejecting the cornerstone. Only listening to Jesus and putting into practice what he says brings lasting life. His claim to be the rock of truth to base life on is outrageous, isn't it? There's no sitting on the fence with Jesus. One either ignores or rejects him and builds life on sinking sand that will cause a great crash, or one makes him the kingpin of your existence in his unshakable kingdom. We can trust Jesus because he was committed to facing the hurricane of the cross to give us a new start in him. As we rebuild new, sustainable lives out of lockdown, may we root our lives deep into the person of Jesus and remain standing after the storms have passed. May I respectfully suggest you owe it to yourself to explore the outrageous claims of Jesus. Go and read a gospel today. Don't miss out on life in all its fullness. What if life with Jesus really does work like he says it does? I'm Matt Tuttleby, your host of Bundoran Bible Reflections.